Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much. And Dean Juarez, you're a very generous man. He gave me his cap because the one they gave me was too small for my big head. Thank you, sir. Dean Juarez and division directors Lynn Allen, Robert Dodson, and Jim Petosa, and faculty, families, and of course, graduates. I think President Brown, he sent me a letter. President Brown sent me a letter inviting me to do this. And my yes came back so fast, I think he felt like he'd been stunned by a phaser. To refuse this request, this invitation would have been highly illogical. I am a walking, talking bundle of gratitude. I grew up in this great city, surrounded by academia, the arts, and a powerful wave of immigrant energy. I was lucky. I met people who took me by the hand and said, look at this, try that. And early on, I had a sense of what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. I suspect some of you graduates aren't there yet. You haven't decided exactly what you want to do or how to go about doing it. That's okay. Yes, it will worry your parents. Just keep in mind what Robert Frost said. Home is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. So hang in there, life does unfold. And for those of you who know exactly what you want to do, good. Now all you need to do is to find someone to pay you for doing it. I have 3 words for you: persistence, persistence, and persistence. 65 years ago, I saw Ted Williams hit home runs at Fenway Park. I learned at the sale on the Charles River. I sold newspapers at the corner of Boylston and Arlington in front of the Arlington Street Church in the winter. From where I lived, there was a 10-minute walk to Boston Garden, where I watched the Celtics, the Bruins, and the Ringling Brothers Circus. The neighborhood was called the West End. 3- and 4-story attached brick buildings, a tenement area populated by immigrants, approximately 65% Italian, 30% Jews, living side by side, and identifiable by the smell of the cooking as you walked up the stairs. We had neighbors named Santo Sawasso and Spinelli and Rabinowitz and Cohen. The Italian iceman who delivered blocks of ice before we had a refrigerator learned enough Yiddish to talk to his Jewish customers who had not yet managed the English language. I first stepped on stage when I was 8 years old at 357 Charles Street, the Elizabeth Peabody Playhouse. The Playhouse is gone now, but for years you could see a sign on the spot which said, if you lived here, you'd be home now. It was a community settlement house which was created to help immigrants find their way into the culture. They offered classes in language, cooking, shopping, kitchen sanitation, dental care, and how to apply for a job. There was a gym and a sports program, and there was a small gem of a theater. When I was 8 years old, I was asked to sing a song, probably God Bless America, and I was cast as Hansel in a production of Hansel and Gretel. It was something to do after school and on weekends, and I continued to perform there in various children's productions for several years. When I was 17, I was cast in the role of a teenager in a play called Awake and Sing. Now, this was my first time in an adult production, an adult play. The play was written by Clifford Odets. It concerned a Jewish family in the Bronx, very much like my own in the West End. 3 generations living in one apartment, and the young man I portrayed was experiencing the same concerns I had at the time. How do you find the right job? How do you find the right girl? Who am I supposed to be, and what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life? Maybe some of you have experienced what I felt doing this role in this play. I was electrified. The author gave me a voice when I was struggling to find my own. This piece gave an audience illumination about their own lives. I thought if I could do work like this for the rest of my life, I would consider myself blessed. I had found my path. Around this time, I had a welcome bit of affirmation. I was seen in a play by a Jesuit priest who ran the theater program at Boston College. He offered me a scholarship for an 8-week summer theater program, and I grabbed at it. It was classes every morning, rehearsals in the afternoon, and performances at night, after which we would help build the sets for the next week's production, and often fall asleep on the stage and start the whole thing all over again in the morning. And I loved it. And I was totally comfortable, this Jewish kid from a Yiddish-speaking family at a Jesuit school, being blessed daily with Our Fathers and Hail Marys. And I will always be grateful to Father John Bond. The last job that I had before leaving Boston, I was selling vacuum cleaners on Boylston Street. The money I made went to pay tuition at a theatrical school in California. Don't ask me why I didn't go to New York, I still don't know. Life unfolds. I got on a train at South Station. I spent 3 days and 3 nights in a coach seat, and I was excited. I knew without a doubt what I wanted to do, and I believed that I had something to give. After 6 months at the school, I dropped out. I feel safe in telling you I was a dropout because you're graduating today. I paid $400 for the first year tuition, and when I abruptly left, I got a refund of $47. Why did I drop out? I felt I wasn't getting what I needed. In fact, I wasn't sure of what I needed, but I knew I was not being touched or inspired. The work I was involved with in Boston as a teenager was better than what was being done by the graduates at the school. Now, full disclosure, some of the people who stayed in that school were helped later in building their careers by the network of folks they met in that school. Networking is important. I hit the streets, making the rounds of agents' offices, and within a year after leaving the school, I was on a soundstage, in costume, and acting on film. Not much of it came, although I had high hopes. Maybe what sank the project was the title. It was called Zombies of the Stratosphere. And in case you're wondering, the answer is yes, I played a zombie. It would be almost 10 years before I would become a student again. In the meantime, I jobbed around in small roles in smaller productions, but I was gaining experience. I worked at various low-level jobs. I spent 2 years in the United States Army. I got married, had 2 kids, and came back to Los Angeles with little money and the tiny scraps of a career. I drove a taxi at night so that I could be available for auditions during the day. One night, I picked up Jack Kennedy at the Bel Air Hotel. Yes, that Jack Kennedy, the senator from Massachusetts at the time, and future president. We chatted about careers, politics, and show business, and we agreed that both had a lot in common, maybe too much in common. He said, lots of competition in your business, just like mine. And then he gave me this. Just remember, there's always room for one more good one. Words to live by, and I tried to do that. After 10 years in California, I had developed my craft, and then I finally came to understand what I needed to learn. Spencer Tracy, when asked about acting technique, said, know your lines and don't bump into the furniture. Well, he had his tongue firmly planted in his cheek. If acting is to be considered an art, one needs to learn more than the superficial craft. This is true of any work in the arts. What is the work about? What does it say to a contemporary audience? What light does it cast on our lives and on the issues which concern us and connect us? Indeed, how does it help to heal the world. I found a teacher who put me in touch with these issues. The craft that I had acquired over the years served its purpose as a foundation. I was introduced to theme, to substance, and to subtext. My work improved, and I began to support myself and my family as an actor for the first time. I was 35 years old. I had come to be recognized as a useful performer who could bring something personal to a role. And then came Mr. Spock in 1966. It took 15 years, but I was ready. I was on my game. Still, I hesitated. I took my work seriously. Did I really want to put on those pointed ears? Well, a wonderful curator and founder of the New Museum in New York, Marcia Tucker, said, "Do what scares you." Well, it scared me, and I did it. My folks came to the United States as immigrants, aliens, and they became citizens. I was born in Boston, a citizen. I went to Hollywood, and I became an alien. Spock called for exactly the kind of work I was prepared to do. He was a character with a rich and dynamic inner life, half human, half Vulcan. He was the embodiment of the outsider, like the immigrants who surrounded me in my early years. How do you find your way as the alien in a foreign culture? How does your identity, your dignity, where does your identity and your dignity come from? And how do you make a contribution? I'm reminded as a quote from John F. Kennedy as president. He said, "We must never forget that art is not a form of propaganda. Art is a form of truth." Spock was a truth. The character, seemingly so foreign, was welcomed and quickly became enormously popular. And then, for the first time, in a wonderful script by Theodore Sturgeon, I said, "Live long and prosper," and stuck up my hand in an ancient Hebraic gesture, and the deal was done. The impact on my life was intense, and I had to learn to deal with celebrity. When the Star Trek series was canceled after 3 seasons, and folks are shocked that it was only 3, I was hired to work on the Mission Impossible series, and I was thrilled. The series was visual, it was cinematic, and I got to play a wide variety of characters in makeups and dialects. I played Asians, Europeans, South Americans, businessmen, hippies. In the 2nd season, the same characters came around again, and I thought I would go out of my mind. Not only was I being asked to do the same characters, more importantly, they had no inner life. They were charades. The demands on me were totally superficial, no substance, no inner life, no truth. I was dying a slow creative death, and I asked to be let out of my contract, which still had 3 years to run. I was let go, and I never looked back. Since Star Trek went on the air 46 years ago, I have never been without work. I have given hundreds of performances in films, television, and theaters, including Broadway and stages across the country. The North Shore Music Theater in Beverly, the Cape Cod Melody Tent, where I acted in Fiddler on the Roof and Camelot, the Wilbur Theater on Tremont Street, where I presented my one-man show about Vincent van Gogh. And I went back to school and earned a master's degree in education when I was in my 30s. I never worked, I never drank when I was smoking. I got that backward. I never worked drunk. Oh, Scotty, beat me out of here. I never worked drunk and I never worked high. Though I must say I paid my respects to smoking and booze. I smoked a lot of cigarettes, and all the good that came from it was to send some tobacco growers' kids through college, and what I got was a pair of beat-up lungs. Respect your body. It's a vital part of the creative process. The alcohol got a firm grip on me until I gave it up 23 years ago. Our creativity walks on a razor's edge, using both sides of the brain. The left side of the brain gives us logic and discipline. On the right side is instinctive, creative thinking. We, as artists, we need both. You fall to the left and we lose inspiration and originality. Fall too far to the right and we're in danger of drifting into undisciplined chaos. The secret of a long, healthy career in the arts is the successful walk on the razor's edge. Here's a description of the artist's life. Edwin Booth, the actor, heard the solemn whisper of the God of all arts. I shall give you hunger and pain and sleepless nights. Also, beauty and satisfaction known to few, and glimpses of the heavenly life. None of these shall you have continually, and of their coming and going you shall not be foretold. As a kid, we walked the Boston Commons and the public gardens, and I was intrigued by the inscription on a fountain there. It's from Ecclesiastes. It says, "Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days." Not long ago, I tweeted that. And what came back was, "Cast thy bread upon the waters, and you'll get soggy bread." Well, I reject cynicism. I reject it. To me, that inscription means what goes around comes around. You are the creators and the curators of your own lives. You create your own life and your work. Give us your best. Give us the best of your art. We crave it. We hunger for it. Help us to see ourselves, to know ourselves. Illuminate our lives. And keep in mind what Victor Hugo said, popularity is the crumbs of greatness. And please, please, for the sake of our culture, for the sake of mankind, don't create any more reality TV shows. And of course, I cannot leave without saying to you, in all sincerity, live long and prosper. Thank you. Thank you.